and you may have heard this just briefly, it broke as we were coming on the air, he is claiming to disagree with President Trump. But let me get into it. This is a rare new interview, and it comes as the embattled Attorney General is taking heat for siding with Trump in this very controversial way, politically intervening in the case of convicted Trump aide Roger Stone, and many say blatantly politicizing the Department of Justice. Now, we're going to break down exactly what Barr is doing and why you can't really take it at face value. I'll show you the evidence. Now, let's take a look here at Mr. Barr claiming that what you need to focus on are the words.
Public statements and tweets made about the department, about our people in the department, our men and women here, about cases pending in the department, and about judges before whom we have cases, make it impossible for me to do my job.
That's the Attorney General of the United States appearing to criticize his boss, something Mr. Barr almost never does. And I can tell you, we've never seen him do anything like this on this high stakes of an issue. Donald Trump's own convicted aide, Roger Stone. Saying that the President of the United States makes it impossible for you to do your job sounds like criticism. And we're going to get into all of it. But then watch as Barr claims that basically the noise the President makes undercuts him.
I'm not going to be bullied or influenced by anybody. And I said at the time, whether it's Congress, newspaper, editorial boards, or the president, I'm going to do what I think is right. And, I cannot do my job here at the department with a constant background commentary that undercuts me.
Now, the question is, what is Mr. Barr doing right now? It's pretty clear that he's responding to what has been widespread condemnation, including from legal conservatives, after getting scorched by even his own allies. Take fellow Republican veterans of the Justice Department, President George W. Bush's Assistant Attorney General, Jack Goldsmith, who's previously defended Barr, but is now calling on him to outright quit unless he can better prevent and resist Donald Trump's politicized commands to the Justice Department. Add on top of that, Democratic leaders blasting Mr. Barr for meddling in the Stone case, condemning Donald Trump's attacks on the judge who will ultimately sentence Stone.
AG Barr has deeply damaged the rule of law by withdrawing the DOJ sentencing recommendation. What a sad disappointment to our country.
The nation now looks again to Chief Justice Roberts to make clear to President Trump that these attacks are unacceptable.
That's just some of the condemnation from top Democrats. And let's be clear, Mr. Barr tonight has not changed a thing about the intervention in Roger Stone's case. He has not changed the results. He has not changed the substance. It is newsworthy to be sure that he's criticizing Donald Trump at all, but he's only doing so about the tweets. You might paraphrase Attorney General Barr tonight as saying, basically, I stand by all the political intervention in the Justice Department that even my own conservative colleagues say is wrong. I just wish Donald Trump wasn't tweeting about what we were up to. And let's go wider on the historical context. Donald Trump infamously said he wanted a Roy Cohn at his Justice Department. That is the disgraced and ultimately disbarred mafia lawyer so known for breaking rules. And critics say that's what he's now getting with Bill Barr, who's clearly interfering to change the criminal case, the way this will be resolved, of one of Donald Trump's closest allies. It's not even debatable that what he's doing cuts against all rules, norms, and requirements at the Justice Department. And for that, I give you Bill Barr in 2001 explaining the Justice Department is special and different. You don't mess around with it, you don't intervene, you don't interfere. Bill Barr has been busted, according to many experts and critics, for messing around, intervening, and interfering. And here's the bottom line on the substance. Barr's position remains the same: siding with Trump, protecting a Trump aide, intervening to the degree that these prosecutors quit in apparent protest. The Donald Trump DOJ plot is being supported widely by Mr. Barr. Now, though, under pressure, he has to do something. So to save himself, he is trying to argue the problem is the tweets. But don't lose your eye on the ball of what's actually happening. Barr backing the same results. I can't say that enough, because that's what this is all about. Now, we begin with former federal prosecutor Maya Wiley, who worked at the Southern District of New York. We have some other special guests, but I wanted to speak with you first because, as is so often the case trying to cover these stories, both things can be true. It strikes me as newsworthy that Mr. Barr is trying to make it appear that he's criticizing his boss, President Trump, which he almost never does. And yet I put the first question to you on the substance, which we like to focus on here. Does any of this change Mr. Barr's approach to intervening in the Stone case?
Nope.
Nope.
Nope. Look, what's clear here, and I think you said it, and I'll say it even a little more pointedly, Bill Barr is battling blame, but he's not battling for justice. I mean, remember that we're talking about Roger Stone, who not only lied under oath, he threatened a witness. So he intervenes in what line attorneys, the attorneys who handled the case from beginning to end, assessed in terms of what they thought Roger Stone deserved. But now Donald Trump tweets, and Bill Barr says, oh, well, I didn't hear the tweet. I mean, the tweet came after we had already made the decision to intervene. And the question becomes, well, why now is the tweeting so bad? Because, you know, Donald Trump tweeted when Roger Stone was on trial. And I don't recall Bill Barr being upset about that. And we've had a number of tweets from Donald Trump that I don't recall Bill Barr being upset about.
Let's pause on that. You make such a great point. We laid out some of the issues, but you're pointing to something we hadn't gotten into our setup there, which is there's nothing new about Donald Trump rage tweeting in ways that can undermine the rule of law. This, you're pointing out, is something where Mr. Barr was a very smart person. His critics call him diabolical, but he's very smart. He sat down in the middle of this pickle and brainstormed all these things. And this is the best thing a smart person could come up with, which, as you point out, anyone who follows the news knows this ain't new.
It ain't new. It's not even new for him to attack the Justice Department by tweet. And Bill Barr didn't stand up for the FBI when he, or frankly for Robert Mueller when he said, yeah, I can understand why Donald Trump is tweeting that it's a witch hunt. And he certainly didn't stand up for the FBI, and he certainly did stand up for conspiracy theories when Donald Trump was tweeting his conspiracy
theories. Let's dig in deeper. I'm so glad you're our guest to kick this off. Mr. Barr said something in his confirmation hearing under oath that, to use the Nixonian reference now, would be inoperative, because he claimed he had no pressure from the president to make any political allegiances, to do the kind of meddling that he is now, the DOJ is literally accused of doing. So this is inoperative, but it's important because the tweet, if anything, bothers people who say, oh, now we're busted. Because if it's private, you can debate it. It's public. Everyone saw that he demanded special treatment for his friend Roger Stone, who's a convicted felon now. Look at Mr. Barr in the confirmation hearing.
President Trump has sought no assurances, promises, or commitments from me of any kind, either express or implied, and I have not given him any. My allegiance will be to the rule of law, the Constitution, and the American people.
So, the only thing I have to say to that is Senator Kamala Harris. When she asked him, has anyone from the White House asked you to open investigations or start investigations, the word suggest came up, and Bill Barr said, I'm struggling with the word suggest. Really difficult word for a very intelligent person to define, suggest. So I think what we know is he says what he needs to say when he needs to say it to help himself or Donald Trump. And today, it's himself.
Really important, and as a prosecutor who I know cares about the rule of law on these issues, whichever way they break politically, I'm glad to have you. I want you to stick around with me, but I have a very special guest that I'm going to turn to now, which is Donald Ayer. He's known Bill Barr for more than 4 decades, worked with him at the Justice Department, preceded him as Deputy Attorney General under President George H.W. Bush. We are especially excited when we have seasoned veterans around, and you're one of them. Thanks for being on the beat tonight.
Thank you. Good to be here.
On the substance, what do you think of what Mr. Barr is saying today and what he is at the same time doing in this case that touches so closely to the president?
Well, I think the two of you have really nailed the point that nothing he said today changes anything. And I think really what we need to do is take a couple of steps back and focus not just on the most recent event, which is bad enough, but to focus on the whole pattern of events that he's engaged in since he came in as Attorney General. I notice we're coming up, I think, tomorrow on the anniversary of his term as Attorney General, and this is probably one of the worst examples of interfering in an inappropriate way by clearly taking action out of the regular course of the routine and the process that the department follows. But if you go back, we all remember.
Let me ask you about that for preference, just for preference and context. You're saying this is one of the worst examples. As mentioned, you served at a high level in the Bush senior administration. Do you see this as worse than any meddling that was exposed in the last, say, 2 or 3 administrations? When you say worst, help us understand what you mean.
Well, what I'm focused on really is the whole pattern of conduct that he's engaged in since he came in. And it's a whole pattern of things that involves intervening out of the usual course in order to protect Donald Trump. And the first example that we all remember was when he went before, he wrote the letter and went before the cameras to say that the Mueller report didn't have any evidence of obstruction or didn't show a persuasive case of obstruction. And that was his publicity of it. But then what came out in the ensuing days, and when people saw the report, indeed it contained powerful evidence. We heard his comments effectively trying to overrule the decision of the Inspector General Horowitz, who looked into the FBI investigation, and he found that it was properly predicated and that there was no bias. And immediately Bill Barr and then his appointed prosecutor, Mr. Durham, come out and say, we disagree with that. We have the whole pattern of his conduct commenting on the FBI spying back before the investigation had been consummated.
Well, let me play, since you mentioned that, let me play some of the spying and the other comments he's made against the backdrop of him knowing better, his own statement, you don't do this. Take a look.
I think there's spying did occur. Yes, I think spying did occur. It is the left that is engaged in the systematic shredding of norms and undermining the rule of law. The evidence developed by the special counsel is not sufficient to establish that the president committed an obstruction of justice offense.
When you look at all that, and he should know better given his experience, what do you make of what Mr. Barr is doing, and do you think he is still fit for this office?
I don't think he's fit for the office, because I think what he's done is to undertake a campaign essentially to undermine the Department of Justice as it was reformed and as we've all lived with it for the last 45 years, reformed following Watergate. At that time, Edward Levy, the Attorney General, essentially kind of gave instructions and thought through the process by which the Justice Department, given the power that it has, needs to bend over backwards to establish public trust in what it's doing. And so you have the processes that involve complete separation of political forces from the decisions made in the department, certainly in the criminal area. You have processes of review where, I think, as was true with these sentencing recommendations, they went up through a process in the department and they went forward. They followed the guidelines. They were, whatever one thinks of them, is they're heavy or not heavy, they were the product of a process that relied upon the guidelines, which were put in place in order to try to make sentencing fair and uniform. And all of that got reviewed, and all of a sudden, at the time the president speaks up, Mr. Barr steps in. The problem is that we're losing an ability to have confidence that the department is not going to be influenced by improper forces. And when you think about someone goes easy on someone because they're the president's friend, well, what about the problem of going hard on someone because they're his enemy?
Right, and what happens in the backdrop of the president having publicly demanded investigations of his rivals, and where is democracy at, and who's going to speak up? And you, being someone who worked with Mr. Barr, who I mentioned work in the Bush Justice Department, we appreciate your straightforward analysis tonight. Donald Ayre, thank you, sir.
Okay.
I'm going to bring back in Maya Wiley just briefly. We're running over on time, my producers tell me. But I want to hear your reaction briefly. Mr. Ayre has known Barr a long time. It's always harder to go at the people that you were professional colleagues with, maybe friends with. What do you make of him as a former Bush DOJ official saying what he just said?
I think it speaks to the danger of the times we're in. And that, I think what was so important about what Mr. Ayre said, and I completely agree with, is when justice isn't blind, it's broken. And Bill Barr is helping to break it.
Maya Wiley, that gets the last word in this segment. Thank you. Thanks to Mr. Ayer. Coming up, we have a former White House aide blasting Donald Trump's purge and the illegal order in Ukraine. Interesting, coming from, again, another Trump aide. Later tonight, I have a special report on keys to understanding that told us, including me and my colleague Hallie Jackson, the very night Justice Scalia died. It was 4 years ago today. We're going to show that to you because it matters. And later, a special conversation tonight. I am joined by my colleague Chris Matthews and the legendary Debbie Harry from Blondie for a very special conversation that we think will be great right here on The Beat. Please stay with us. His intervention to help Roger Stone while also criticizing Donald Trump's tweets. He claims that Donald Trump has been made it impossible for him to do his job, and this comes as Donald Trump, of course, has been successful in getting the DOJ to help Roger Stone, and it's been sparking those protest resignations from prosecutors. Donald Trump discussing it today.
I don't think they quit the case. I think what they do is they felt they got caught. You want to know the truth? Yeah. I don't think they quit for moral reasons. I think they got caught in the act by me.
Now, New York Times also reporting federal prosecutors concerned about where this all goes. Trump has also attacked a Roger Stone juror that's an American citizen, alleging without evidence significant bias. She had simply said in public that she thought the prosecutors, who Attorney General Barr overruled, had acted with integrity. I want to bring in Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist Eugene Robinson from the Washington Post. Good to see you, sir.
Good to be here, Ari.
We heard from very seasoned lawyers first and went through the law. For the bigger picture, we turn to you because this is both about the Justice Department, but it's also after impeachment, after Senate acquittal. It's about what's happening in Trump's America. Your view, big picture, sir.
Well, so Attorney General Barr's statements today, this administration and this president operate in really in two different realms, right? There's the universe of reality, and you and your esteemed panel of lawyers are absolutely right to point out that nothing Barr said today changes what he did. He did not recommend that all the sentencing guidelines be changed nationwide for the crimes that Roger Stone was convicted of by a jury.
Yep.
He didn't do that. He recommended that a lighter sentence be given to Donald Trump's longtime friend and crony. And that's the reality. But there's also the universe of reality television. And in that universe, which President Trump cares a lot about, it is not done that somebody who works for President Trump publicly in a television interview calls him out and says, stop doing this. You are making it impossible for me to do my job, which basically sounds like a threat. Look, you keep doing this, I'm going to quit. Trump has never reacted well to that sort of chastisement in public, especially on television. And so it will be fascinating to see. I know that there's an anodyne statement that's out from Stephanie Grisham at the White House, basically saying, well, of course the president wasn't bothered. But I don't believe that.
You nailed it. You nailed it. The publicist statement here doesn't matter. As you say, and we've tried to lead with the substance, and to echo you, Eugene, Bill Barr didn't come out and say, well, since we went lighter on Roger Stone, we're going to change the sentencing requirements and how they affect poor people and black and brown people who are disproportionately hit with heavy sentences around the country. Or we're going to actually look again at the Stone case and maybe not intervene the way we did because we've been blasted so much. He didn't do anything substantive. But as you say, even non-substantive public criticism of this president, he has not shown an ability to handle it. And I want to play something really interesting also for your big picture reaction, which is an interview that's gotten less attention where Donald Trump muses about the difference between Sessions and Barr, saying this, of course, before the public criticism. Today, take a listen to this Trump interview.
And my life would have been a lot easier. But I might have been less popular because they say they like that I fought it. They like that I won. They like that my base is much more energized. Bill Barr's a very good man doing a very good job, but my life would have been much easier. There's no question about it.
Gene?
Well, his life would have been easier, but the country would have been in, I believe, greater peril because, look, I was foreign correspondent for the Post. I covered South America at a time when big nations down there were just coming back from military dictatorship, trying to reestablish democracy. And one of the big problems was that justice was perceived as being politicized. And once you lose faith in blind justice, it's very, very hard to get it back. And what it gives rise to, it's like a corrosive, corrupting influence on the whole society. It encourages conspiracy theories and conspiratorial thinking. It makes everybody think, gee, I should be on the take. I should be cutting every corner and getting every advantage, because that's the way the world works. When you don't have a justice system that you can have faith in. And believe me, we do not want to go down that path, and we are closer to going down that path than in my lifetime, and it really, really worries me.
You just said in your lifetime. We heard from Mr. Ayers earlier in the show, who knows Barr and served in the Justice Department, talked about some of the worst stuff he's seen in his lifetime and his service. It is striking and at least important to shine a light. Gene Robinson, thank you as always. When we're back in 30 seconds, I have a special report with our new information that you're going to want to see, we think, about this upcoming debate and heat on the Democratic Party. In our special report tonight on developments that could shape who is the ultimate Democratic nominee to run against Trump. So how many people actually have been running for this Democratic presidential nomination? About 28, if you count them all up, but it does feel like the number of contenders is fewer. And that's because even before these first votes have started being cast, voters often see the real contender candidates as those who make the debate stage. And that makes sense. If you're not top 7, say, in last week's debate, how seriously should voters take you? And that number has just fallen to 6 since even that debate on Friday with Andrew Yang dropping out. In fact, even if you're pretty well known or have a lot of money, making the debate stage can make a big difference. Billionaire Ross Perot said he didn't initially care much about debates, but being on that stage with both parties' nominees, it made all the difference for his insurgent campaign.
You think you'll be included in the debates?
I could care less.
Care less?
No.
You want to be in the debates?
Oh, I'd love to if it's a real debate.
The start of the debates next weekend. Ross Perot has been invited to join in.
Why should you have been in this debate if you're running only 5% in the polls?
Because we met all of the objective criteria of the debate commission. We were in the campaign last time, and we were included in the debates.
So what makes the objective criteria? Well, in the primaries, the party decides. So while different media outlets rotate in broadcasting these debates, it is only the Democratic Party that sets the criteria for who's in them. And these can be make or break. This cycle, the DNC made rules requiring candidates must meet a polling threshold or draw grassroots fundraising from 65,000 people. Now, why make those donations a requirement at all? Well, the DNC chairman, Tom Perez, said last year the requirement tests candidates on proving their national appeal as an opportunity for people who don't have the national name ID to get on the debate stage. He went on, if you want to win the presidency, you've got to connect with grassroots America. Here is how Perez pitched it.
18 months out from an election, if the only pathway to a debate stage is polling, we thought that was potentially unfair. And so I think the grassroots fundraising pathway is a very viable pathway, and it's important to empower the grassroots.
All right. The DNC says that rule empowers the grassroots through small donations, and it's not like millionaire bundling here. We know in the past, candidates like Barack Obama showed early enthusiasm with those grassroots donations. Now, some candidates obviously do better than others under this year's rules. Cory Booker found himself boxed out of a looming debate because he couldn't meet all the DNC requirements. His campaign argued those requirements from the DNC quickened him leaving the race. Now, Chairman Perez pushed back. He said earlier that he was a fan of Booker. But if voters are disappointed Booker hasn't qualified, then when they answer the phone to pollsters, they need to express their preference for Booker. Okay, those are the rules. And we all know from candidates to athletes, the people who are losing often complain more about the rules or the calls on the field. But here's why I'm telling you all this tonight. This is super important. The story tonight is about whether it is fair for the Democratic Party to change the rules in the middle of the game. Real question. Is it fair to change in the middle? Now, before anyone decides who this rule change helps or who it might hurt, let's answer that question. No. It's not fair to change the rules in the middle. And that would be true if it was the government changing the voting laws in the middle, or either political party or any party in the middle of a primary. And I think that's obviously pretty clear from a position of fairness before you get to the concerns from some about the Democratic Party's approach to Iowa or the 2016 primary or anything else. But here we are, in the middle of the heart of this primary now, after campaigns built strategies trying to make the debate stage under the rules, and plenty of qualified candidates, as you know, have dropped out. Now the DNC is changing the rules for making the coveted debate stage, completely eliminating the requirement that candidates must have received donations from hundreds of thousands of people. And the new rules say candidates can now make the debate stage by meeting thresholds for delegates or polling. New rules, middle of the game. Now, Democrats who love one candidate may only be interested in how this affects that person. This is still politics, team sport. Who are you rooting for? But I'm also telling you tonight, this is a larger democracy question for a Democratic Party which says in its platform and in its campaigning this year that it stands for transparency and voting rights and fairness. So what is the impact? Well, so far, 5 candidates qualify for this next debate, and here they are. Only 3 of them, by the way, have passed that polling requirement. But by eliminating the grassroots donor requirement, the DNC is opening up a lane for a 6th candidate. And he is a big one. Former Republican Mayor Mike Bloomberg and his self-funded campaign. Now, under the original rules, a self-funder wouldn't make this debate. But now, Bloomberg could make future Democratic debates. It's early. He hasn't yet qualified, but he is actually getting close. He needs one more poll to put him at 10%. And the DNC is now catching fire. And not just from, I would call it, people who didn't make the debate. You're going to hear criticism from Democrats who qualified for the debate and some who have not.
So instead of trying to get a more diverse group of candidates, they changed the rules for Michael Bloomberg. And that just seems to me to be wrong.
The DNC holding their own pre-primary process, deciding which candidates they want voters to hear from, and then changing the rules for a billionaire Michael Bloomberg to come in and take the debate stage.
He's worth $55 billion. And I guess if you're worth $55 billion, you can get the rules changed for debate.
So here's what we know. The DNC made debate rules and stood by them even as they helped potentially eliminate some of the top Democratic candidates, U.S. senators. The DNC said those rules were fair because they tested grassroots support. Then the DNC changed the rules midstream in a way that can only add one particular candidate to the debates. Now, I'll tell you what the DNC says about this. They defend this, arguing that the donor threshold was appropriate for the opening stages of the race when there were no metrics available outside of polling to distinguish those making progress from those who were not. But if that was the whole story, the DNC could have factored all of that into the original rules. And it is hard to see why polling should count more now after this voting started than it did before. Now, I want to be very clear and fair about this. Nobody knows how this will all play out. I've heard from operatives who are saying that Bloomberg is doing well without being in the debates, where on that stage there could be more incoming fire. And we've heard from other operatives who say if Mike Bloomberg does want to really win the party nomination, then he has to eventually be on that debate stage to be seen as a finalist, so this could help him. But either way, and this is what I plead for everyone to keep an eye on, we are living through a time when our democracy is being tested. No party is immune from scrutiny and vetting for fairness. And as for Democratic Party Chairman Perez, the question's simple. Is it fair and transparent to change the rules midstream? No. Just ask Tom Perez. Here he was in January.
We made the rules. They were very transparent. They're very inclusive. And we can't change the rules midstream because there's a candidate that I wish were on but didn't make the debate stage.
This case, what do you believe the president has learned?
The president has been impeached. That's a pretty big lesson.
Republican Senator Susan Collins, that was just last week, arguing Trump has learned his lessons. Here is what the president just said about that.
What lesson did you learn from impeachment?
That the Democrats are crooked. They've got a lot of crooked things going. That they're vicious. That they shouldn't have brought impeachment.
We turn now to former Republican Party chairman and MSNBC analyst Michael Steele. Learning lessons, sir. Take it away.
Yeah, President hasn't learned jack. I don't know where these people get this stuff. I mean, Donald Trump has never exhibited any behavior that would indicate that he would learn from anything anyone else had to say or do. He is his own enterprise, and he knew from the beginning how he wanted this to play out, Ari. He's played it out that way with the help of, a very malleable Republican Senate, and with Democrats who made missteps along the way. And so the lesson that has to be learned for the rest of us, it's not about teaching Donald Trump anything, is what do we learn from this as we get ready for the next 7 months of this campaign?
You just,
what do we learn?
I feel that. I didn't know what you were going to say, but I feel what you're saying. It's very KRS-One, you must learn. And if the president won't learn, then you're arguing very clearly we need to take, in your view, the Senator Collins' bizarre ideas about him and apply it to the body politic in the society.
Yes.
How do you do that?
Well, you do it in a number of ways. One, just by using your own eyes and ears, and then applying your brain cells to what you see and you hear. And then, gosh, there's a process there where the rest of those things that your mama taught you kick in. And you go, well, that's just not good behavior. That's not something I want my children to learn. This is not the way our government should run.
You're saying cognitive thinking, I got it from my mama.
Yeah, what a concept, you know?
I like it. Let me show you the pushback that another Republican senator, Lisa Murkowski's getting. We dug this up. I don't think it's gotten much attention, but our beat team found a lot of the letters to the editor in Alaska, which is a known conservative state, complaining in the Anchorage Daily News about people like Senator Murkowski who are forever tainted as a traitor to the Constitution. They should find something else to do. Others saying in straight up, straightforward Alaska language, God help our nation for this lack of moral courage. What do you, as someone who knows some of these states, it's a red state obviously, think of that?
Well, look, it tells you, again, this is where that whole cognitive piece kicks in. Folks out there, regardless of what you think in your little corner of your tribe, the rest of the community around you has an opinion, a thought, an idea about what's happening. And they are not disinclined to share it. And so when you see these headlines, and when people have objectively observed and internalized the last 3.5 years, they're going to come back to you with what their expectations are and what their fears are and what their concerns are. In fact, Ari, that's what Donald Trump did in 2016. He took that internalized fear and those concerns, and he tapped into them because the body politic, including the media, was either ignorant of them or didn't take them very seriously. So that fed that narrative. So we know that now. We've learned from that. And the question is, what is the body politic? Whether it's center left, center right, whatever it happens to be, what does the media now do in taking lessons from what Donald Trump has already taught us? Because we know what's coming next is going to just take what we've already seen to a whole nother level of education. Well, do you want to wait for that education, or do you want to use the tools in front of you, the ballot box, and your voice to take the country in a different direction?
I appreciate it. You've been there. You know these issues. You're smart, and you're so clear. It's like vitamin water. I appreciate you, Chairman Steele.
You got it, my friend. Same back at you.
Well, thank you. We'll have you back soon, I hope. Let me tell when you're free. Let me tell you, what you're looking at here is history, living history, a 4-year anniversary that is very important and plays into where we're headed. I'm going to tell you where we stand tonight about that story coming up. And later, as mentioned, guess who's on the beat? Chris Matthews with Blondie's Debbie Harry. I know you won't see that anywhere else. That's tonight. Stick with us.
As a struggling actor, I need all the breaks that I can get. At Liberty Butchamug. Liberty Bibbity.
Cut. We'll dub it.
Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance so you only pay for what you...
This week's New Hampshire primary might have you kicking back and remembering where were you 4 years ago as Donald Trump was winning his first primary, as Sanders and Clinton were battling it out. And that 2016 race turned on many things, many unpredictable, including the sudden death of Justice Antonin Scalia, which was exactly 4 years ago today.
We join you with this breaking news. Justice Antonin Scalia, the Supreme Court's most influential conservative, has died.
Justice Scalia died sometime last night while in Texas at a guest ranch. This is a big shock. He was in apparently robust health.
Americans are waking up to a huge story this morning, the passing of Justice Scalia, who is being remembered for his brilliant legal mind and fiery style on the bench.
The political reaction was faster than any other such death of a public official. In fact, there was an RNC presidential primary debate that very night. Candidates were weighing in, and the candidate still seen by many Republicans as a long shot, Donald Trump, had his names ready.
First, the death of Justice Scalia and the vacancy that leaves on the Supreme Court.
He will go down as one of the great justices in the history of this republic. You talk about someone who defended consistently the original meaning of the Constitution.
We could have a Diane Sykes, or you could have a Bill Pryor.
The next president needs to appoint someone with a proven conservative record.
Justice Scalia was a legal giant.
No one knew that night that Mitch McConnell would take that seat hostage, or that Trump would win and benefit from that maneuver, which had never been done quite like that before. Now, Donald Trump did not ultimately nominate either name he offered that night, Judges Diane Sykes or Bill Pryor. But actually, as the history unfolds, I can tell you I happened to be anchoring special debate coverage that night, along with my colleague, Hallie Jackson, in the spin room, and we asked for details of why Donald Trump claimed to favor those particular judges.
You also had the first question out of the gate on a day when everybody is talking about the news of Justice Scalia's death, and you seemed prepared for it. You mentioned a couple of names that you would pick as a nominee. Can you elaborate on that? I think, I believe Diane Sykes was one of the names you mentioned.
Diane Sykes.
Yeah.
Very, very a wonderful woman. From everything I know, she's very conservative, highly thought of, from Wisconsin, and I think she'd be a good choice. But again, I'd have to vet Diane Sykes. She's right now a federal judge. I would have to vet many people. I'll tell you, the perfect would be somebody as close to Justice Scalia as we could find.
Hallie, one more question.
One week away from this
Hallie, can you tell me what
Ari's got one more for you, I
if
think.
you can ask, what does he like about Judge Sykes and Judge Pryor?
Ari Melber is our anchor here. As you know, Ari has our very deep legal background. He wants to know, what is it specifically that you like about Judge Sykes and Judge Pryor that led you to bring them up?
A tremendous record, a very conservative record, highly respected, great intellect, all of the things you need to have a great Supreme Court justice.
Thank you much. Ari, back to you.
Thank you to Donald Trump for joining us and joining Hallie Jackson. Thank you for joining us, as we say, and you heard the standard. Very conservative, highly respected. Here we are, just 4 years later, Donald Trump has put two very conservative officials on the Supreme Court. And it is a reminder, as we follow all these issues, how that night was so different than the day before. No one knew what was coming, no one knew what was happening, and no one knew that Donald Trump was going to win that race and what would come after. A reminder to all of us to keep our eyes on the facts and avoid the predictions. We wanted to share that history capsule with you, as the Supreme Court will surely reverberate in this election. Now, when we come back, as promised, what I've been telling you about, two icons, Chris Matthews and Blondie's Debbie Harry, on the beat.
I'm standing on the mountain, about to fall. I'm running on the rooftops, 50 foot tall.
The 2020 Infiniti QX50. Lease the 2020 Infiniti QX50 for $399 a month at your local Infiniti retailer.
Skip to the good part with Alka-Seltzer Plus. Now with 25% more concentrated power. Nothing works faster for powerful cold relief. Oh, what a relief it is. So fast.
Different folks have different strokes. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, get it, baby. Different moves for different grooves. Yeah, 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 yeah. There's evil among us.
There's Nazis living in America.
We would bring God's justice to them. Send the message. Not again. No more.
Introducing even more value from Fidelity. Fidelity now has 0 commissions for online U.S. equity trades and ETFs. And Fidelity also offers 0 account fees for brokerage accounts. Plus, 0 minimums to open an account. And only Fidelity offers 4-0 expense ratio index funds directly to investors. With all those zeros, there are 0 reasons to invest anywhere else. Fidelity.
Your life is a movie, playing out second by second, frame by frame. So how will you fill that time? And will it be worth replaying in your mind over and over again? With Inspirato, you get access to the most exclusive collection of luxury vacation homes and experiences available in the world's most extraordinary destinations. Take your story further with Inspirato.
Where can a healthier heart lead you? For people with heart failure taking Entresto, it may lead to a world of possibilities. Entresto is a heart failure medicine prescribed by most cardiologists. It was proven superior at helping people stay alive and out of the hospital. Heart failure can change the structure of your heart, so it may not work as well. Entresto helps improve your heart. Trust your heart to Entresto.
You've been hearing a lot about 5G, but there's 5G.
And then there's Verizon 5G. We're building the most powerful 5G experience for America.
It's more than 10 times faster than some other 5G networks.
And it's rolling out in cities across the country. So people can experience speeds that ultra-wideband can deliver. 1.7 gigs here in Houston.
1.8 gigs here in frigid Omaha. Almost 2 gigs here in Los Angeles. That's outrageous. It's like an 8-lane highway compared to a 2-lane dirt road.
We eat to live, but food is so much more than that. It's actually baked into our culture and our politics.
I'm Andrew Zimmer. Join me as I explore the biggest social and political questions of the day through the lens of food.